who got degrees at Mountain Empire Community College and went on to UVA-Wise, where he got involved in several projects that involved AI and cybersecurity research. And he has parlayed that experience into working on more postgraduate work at Emory University in Atlanta, where he is specializing in artificial intelligence. Another example that I thought was interesting that came out of here, and this is sort of a continuing education idea, and it's at Radford University, where they have programs that you can use that are asynchronous, online learning that is really useful for people who are already working professionals who want to expand their resumes. And cybersecurity is right in the thick of that. A guy named Tim Shelton, who's a network engineer for the Roanoke County government, took advantage of this. This is free. It's funded through CCI. He and several colleagues signed up for this Foundations of Cybersecurity class, so they can get credentialed in that and increase their hireability if they want to move on or stay there and have a deeper palette to work from within their jobs in county government.
Ted, you also write about how CCI benefits can find their way off campus and into surrounding communities. And for an example, you use some students at UVA-Wise.
They were involved in these cybersecurity assessments in which they visited 3 businesses, and they did cybersecurity assessments for each of those and gave reports, pretty substantial books of notes and to-do type of things that the folks at those organizations could use.
Tad Dickens reports for cardinalnews.org. I'm Fred Eccles.
Cardinal News is a nonprofit online independent news organization covering Southwest and Southside Virginia.
Radio IQ and WVTF Music are in the process of upgrading our digital donation systems. So the online donation form on our website and mobile app will be temporarily paused starting on April 1st. If you want to become a member or make a donation during this period, please call our business offices at 1-800-856-8900 and select option 1. Thank you for listening and supporting public radio across Virginia.
Support for Radio IQ is provided by Olio Financial Planning, meeting clients at the intersection of life and money, taxes, estate planning, insurance, and more. Details at meetolio.com. And from Virginia Housing, helping make home ownership possible with specialty home programs, financing options, classes, and more. Learn more at virginiahousing.com.
Cooler this week under sunny skies. High temperatures will be in the upper 50s in the southwest, around 69 for Danville. Roanoke today, a high near 66 degrees. Fairly clear tonight, lows in the mid-30s and low 40s. We're expecting more sunshine tomorrow, fairly breezy. Highs from the low 50s to lower 60s for most, mid-60s in Southside. Sunny skies Wednesday, highs in the mid-50s and low 60s throughout the region. 43 in Blacksburg and Roanoke. Lynchburg has 46 degrees. Charlottesville and Fredericksburg 46. Richmond 49 degrees.
To see Mount Rushmore in 3D, you travel to the Black Hills of South Dakota. For the U.S. economy in 3D, I hit the open road.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by GEP. With GEP Key, Agentic AI, and GEP Smart Software, GEP is at the forefront in agentic procurement orchestration and autonomous supply chains.
I'm David Brancaccio. First, the price of crude oil remains very high, but down 1% at about $110 a barrel right now. The oil producers cartel, OPEC Plus, did agree Sunday to slightly increase pumping to perhaps calm prices. Yet, many countries can't extract more because of the U.S.-Iran war. Stocks, Dow futures are down slightly. S&P futures are up 0.1%. NASDAQ futures are up 0.4%. We get a revised economic growth figure, GDP, covering late last year on Thursday, but let's go beyond flat statistics here. On this 100th anniversary year of what's called the Mother Road, I wanted a more immersive, updated view of the U.S. economy by traveling a length of historic Route 66, linking Chicago and Southern California, where I started. For road tripping 66 in 2026, we go for a variety of vehicles, starting in a Waymo robot taxi at the pier in Santa Monica, California, myself and two friends.
So this is Route 66 right here, right?
Yep, Route 66. The robot turns onto a stretch of 66 called Santa Monica Boulevard in a city at the sharp end of the coming economic transformation. Headquartered here are some of the entertainment companies soon to be amped up or wiped out by artificial intelligence. Skydance, which just bought Paramount. Also, the gaming company Activision Blizzard is here. But Santa Monica, with its elevated coefficient of economic inequality, is not all fancy studios.
Doesn't smoke.
We limit our drive to just 25 miles in a carbon-intensive 1966 Oldsmobile 442, followed by a stint in my plug-in hybrid Chevy Volt. But the bulk of the 900-mile journey with two buddies will be in a spiffy 2026 all-electric Rivian SUV, which is so darn quiet even at speed that we need to add a playlist. Which version? Stones? No, Chuck Berry.
Get your kicks on Route 66.
That song shapes the oldies vibe of so much of modern 66, a mix of kitschy nostalgia and T-shirts on full display starting 2 hours east in San Bernardino, California. Nearly erased from that company's official history is 66 as the route of the 1930s mass migration, carrying desperate families fleeing the environmental disaster of the Dust Bowl, who collected in camps here.
I just blowed in and I got them Dust Bowl blues.
In a moment, two Route 66 towns where the artificial intelligence revolution is nowhere in sight.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks delivers comprehensive cybersecurity protection while automating cyber defense to stop threats so organizations can thrive. Learn more at paloaltonetworks.com. And by Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance offers personalized rates and customizable coverages for your business vehicles. More at progressivecommercial.com.
After a night in one of the concrete cones for rooms at the Wigwam Motel on Route 66, it's back to the recharged Rivian for a rapid climb into the economy of the high desert, where I find this man up a ladder.
The patina on this building is for real. It's earned. It's not painted on. It's not fake.
Matt Parker, jack of all trades, including photographer, is working on the weathered wooden sign at the Baghdad Cafe in Newberry Springs, California. Matt says there are so few jobs along this sandy stretch of 66 that unemployment is not even a topic of friendly conversation.
When I give rides home from church or something like that, a passenger will get in. I've never said these words. So what do you do for a living? Those are just words I've never put together.
You can buy T-shirts and cold drinks at the cafe. They're trying to sort out permission to cook food again. Who would come here when the amazing Peggy Sue's 50s diner is just 17 miles west? Answer:
the French.
With the French taste in movies.
Mrs. Jasmine? You gotta carry your suitcase yourself. We ain't no Grand Hotel.
My name is Mrs. Münchstettner.
Baghdad Cafe, 1988. German actress Mariana Segebrecht, dressed for the Bavarian Alps, ends up here. German movie, but it's the French who come to relive the magic.
If you buy the tourist package in France to come here to America, the States, this is on it.
While the sand long ago reclaimed a famed water park here, multiple artificial lakes survive, and Matt's plan is to tap his deep well to refill his lake to be the centerpiece of what he'll brand the Sweet Haven Campground. Also,
the railroad's talking about coming here and making this a hub to store here rather than down in Long Beach.
The BNSF Railway is now building along 66 east of here the biggest railway-to-truck freight facility in the country. It promises thousands of direct jobs if world trade still calls for such a complex in this era of tariff-induced reverse globalization. Closer to the Arizona border, we spot the restored neon sign for Roy's Motel and Cafe. The motel's abandoned. The cafe has no hot food, but it has Miss Nicole selling an eclectic range of sodas. I try pumpkin.
I mean,
We have hundreds of people easily a day, easily.
Again, cash flow is driven by cross-border commerce. Nicole says here it's busloads of Italians, so many that the soda bottle recycling bin out front warns in Italian, no spazzatura, no garbage. People come to Amboy to bask in the weirdness of a place where the motel, school, and church are deserted, and there's a half-corporate jet left out back for added post-apocalyptic vibes.
So it boomed until about 1972 when the interstate came through. And they said it dropped down to about 2% of the traffic overnight.
Tomorrow it's onto a piece of Route 66, more forward-looking, a campus that calls this the year of AI empowerment. And I wanted to let you know that I'm moving to a new beat here at Marketplace. And after more than 13 years, this is my last week as host of the Marketplace Morning Report. Again, old Dave Brancaccio will still be around. From APM, American Public Media.
Do you have an old or unused vehicle you no longer need? Do you want to support public radio? Then donate it to support this station. You can give an unwanted car, truck, motorcycle, ATV, or even your boat. It's quick, easy, tax deductible, and we'll even pick it up from you. Go to radioiq.org, click the support tab, and drive all the way down to the vehicle donation link. Thanks.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISC FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
Welcome to NewsHour. It's live from the BBC World Service in London. I'm Tim Frax. The Iranian authorities say one of the leaders of the powerful Revolutionary Guard Corps has been killed. Iranian people tell the BBC they're scared of the latest ultimatum from President Trump.
We're worried about Donald Trump's threat to unleash all hell on Iran if Iran does not make a deal. We're stocking up on water and essentials.
Also, NASA's Artemis 2 mission has now entered the lunar sphere of influence, the gravitational pull of the moon, and it sounds like its emotional pull as well.
The four of us have looked at this moon our entire lives, and the way we are responding to what we are seeing out the window is, it's just like we're a bunch of little kids up here. We cannot get enough of this. It's amazing.
How Northern Ireland has become a world leader in support for mothers who've miscarried. And the icy world of curling hits a hot streak. All that after the news.
BBC News with Danielle Yawowiecka. The Israeli defense minister says the military has attacked Iran's largest petrochemical plant at Asaluye. Israel Katz says the facility is no longer functioning, but Tehran hasn't confirmed whether the sites are offline. Our correspondent in Jerusalem, Daniel Simoni, has more details.
This follows an attack last week on another petrochemical facility, and the Israeli defense minister saying that taken together, these two attacks have struck over 80% of the Iranian petrochemical industry. They are saying that this is necessary because they are saying that industry and the steel-making industry, which was also struck last week by Israel, is a money-making machine for Tehran. They say both industries also feed in to making weapons.
Iran says the intelligence chief of its powerful Revolutionary Guards Corps has been killed in a US-Israeli airstrike. A statement from the organisation said General Majid Khademi had been martyred in an attack at dawn. He's the latest senior figure to have been killed by the United States and Israel. Jia Gol from BBC Persian has more.
He was a veteran of almost 50 years with Revolutionary Guards, and also he was appointed last year after the head of IRGC.
Good morning and welcome to the City Council informal session for April 6, 2026, beginning at 9 o'clock a.m. City Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video streamed through YouTube at youtube.com at Roanoke, VA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. This time I'll ask our clerk, Ms. McCoy, to please call the roll.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Here. Vice Mayor McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Nash?
Here.
Mr. Volleson?
Here.
Ms. Powers? And Mayor Cobb.
Here, and a quorum is present. A couple of announcements to get us started today. On April 20th, 2026, beginning at 10 o'clock a.m., Roanoke City Council will conduct 4 interviews to select 2 candidates to serve as Roanoke City School Board trustees for 3-year terms of office, each commencing July 1st, 2026. The 4 candidates that we will be interviewing are Derek Cackness, Darlene Burcham, Christopher Link, and Donna Littlepage. We have items this morning for consideration. Oh, one more note on that. On the interviews, that same day at 7 o'clock p.m. at our regularly scheduled 7 o'clock p.m. meeting, a public hearing will be held to hear the views of citizens on the said candidates for Roanoke City School Board trustees. And an announcement of the successful candidates will be made at a subsequent council meeting. Our items for action today include a communication from my office requesting that the council convene in a closed meeting to discuss vacancies on certain authorities, boards, commissions, and committees appointed by the council pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 Code of Virginia as amended. The boards and commissions that we'll be considering appointments for today are included in the agenda. Need a motion and a second on this item, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, council members Volleson and Powers. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion is adopted. A communication from the city attorney requesting that city council convene in a closed meeting to consult with legal counsel pertaining to actual litigation regarding a workers' compensation settlement, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A7 Code of Virginia. A motion and second, please.
Resolution.
Second.
Thank you, council members Volleson and Sanchez-Jones. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Powers? Mr. Volleson, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Ms. Powers? And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion is adopted. Third is a communication from the city attorney requesting that city council convene in a closed meeting to consult with legal counsel pertaining to actual litigation regarding opioid settlements, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, pursuant to Section 2-3711A7 Code of Virginia. I'll entertain a motion and second, please.
Second.
Thank you, council members Volleson and Hagan. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, the motion is adopted. Finally, a communication from the city attorney requesting that city council convene in a closed meeting to consult with legal counsel regarding a certain legal matter, requiring the provision of legal advice by the city attorney concerning contract obligations involving a city-owned facility in the central part of the city of Roanoke, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A8 Code of Virginia as amended. We'll entertain a motion and second, please.
Move the motion.
Second.
Thank you, council members Powers and Volleson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the motion is adopted. Now it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome our guests for our legislative committee who are joining us virtually today. And I'm going to recess our council meeting and turn it over to Vice Mayor McGuire to lead our legislative committee.
Thank you, Mayor Cobb. I am going to call to order today's meeting of the Roanoke City Legislative Committee, and I will ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Here.
Mayor Cobb?
Here.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Volleson.
Here.
Ms. Powers. Ms. Appel. Ms. Trigg. And Chairman McGuire.
Here.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum. Before I introduce our guest, I want to make a motion to approve our minutes from our March 2nd meeting.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, council members Hagan and Volleson, and I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Mayor Cobb.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers. Thank you. Oh, and Chairman McGuire, sorry.
Aye. Thank you very much, Ms. McCoy. And now it is my pleasure, I'm going to turn it right over to our guests. We have Mr. Preston Bryant, and I'm not sure if I see Mr. Cox. I don't know if Mr. Binkley will be joining us, but I will turn it over to you to give us an update on where we are with legislative items in Richmond, and then we'll hear a little bit about our federal legislative requests.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. First, I want to again thank Ms. Moore and Ms. Carini for their quick responses and direction during the busy legislative session, and for all members of council who were so engaged during the session. As you know, we're not over yet. First, may I call up, ask the PowerPoint to be presented on screen? Thank you very much. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So you can see this was the 60-day session, the long session. We are scheduled to come back into session on April 22. That's for the one-day reconvene session where the General Assembly will take up the governor's amendments and vetoes, either sustaining either approving or disapproving the amendments, or sustaining or overriding any vetoes that the governor may issue. The governor has until April 13th at 11:59 p.m. to sign, amend, or veto bills. And then the legislature will come back on April 22 to take them up. And as you know, that we did not adopt a budget just yet. There's quite a difference between the House and the Senate, principally on one issue, and that is the data center industry sales tax exemption. It's now valued at about $1.6 billion that is not coming into the Treasury. The Senate insists on ending that sales tax exemption in January 1 of 2027, despite the code of Virginia extending the sales tax exemption until 2035. So that's the major hangup at the moment. So they will take up a special budget session beginning April 23, the next day after the veto session. And we all presume that there's still currently negotiations going on the budget. And so that when they come back on April 23rd, we hope to have a vote within a day or two on a reconciled budget. That remains to be seen. Next slide. A quick glance at some of the going through your legislative program and looking at what your priorities and positions were. These are a few that we pulled out that have passed. And we'll talk about some of these, but you can quickly see the School of Medicine capital funding. The Governor Youngkin put that in the budget. The legislature kept it in the budget. We coordinated on that strategy following Carillion's lead with Mark Lawrence, who represents Carillon. The tree canopy legislation, it was a priority. Solar expanding use of solar. We'll go through some of these in the succeeding slides. All the constitutional amendments that you supported in your legislative program, they were all passed. The Housing Trust Fund, you supported increased funding. I think the House has $12.5 million increase. The Senate has a $50 million increase in the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. So that item remains to be reconciled in the budget negotiations. Currently, the trust fund has about $175 million in it. Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, Governor Youngkin proposed, I believe it was $43 million additional. That has remained in the budget. So some of these things are contingent upon adopting a final budget. Next slide. Going in order in your legislative program and following that format, we have pulled out those corresponding bills. House Bill 181, Delegate Rasool, adding an ADU provision for the city of Roanoke. The Home Builders Association of Virginia opposed this particular bill and other similar bills across the state. They believe very strongly that there was a better way to go, and that is adopting using the Economic Development Authority, as has been done by the city of Richmond. They like that approach. The committee chair, House, County, Cities, and Towns supported that position. This was across numerous bills, that ADU-related bills. And the only way Delegate Rasool was able to get this bill out of committee was to agree to this particular language on having the VHDA study the efficacy of the program and requiring a reenactment clause, meaning the bill would have to pass again next year. That was the only way this bill came out of committee. Delegate Rasool worked very hard on it, and we supported his efforts. But this was kind of a position handed down from on high, so to speak. Similarly, the real estate delinquent taxes bill that you have, we initially had wanted it increased from 75 to 150,000. The Senate, the House Finance Subcommittee reduced it to 125,000. They still calculated this as ahead of inflation since the last time it was increased, and that was 2019 when it went from 50,000 to 75,000. So this was certainly agreeable. Next slide. This was a particular interest of council, the emergency custody orders and the transportation of ECO patients, especially from Carilion and such. We worked a lot on this bill. The House bill was amended to 50 miles. We had to put a limit on it in consultation with the city attorney's office. We came up with 50 miles radius, which was akin to other code sections along this line, so that was not new, that was consistent. Nevertheless, both the House and the Senate bills were not successful, but instead there were other House and Senate bills that took the approach of permitting sheriff's departments or police departments re-engaging or hiring retired police officers for this function. This transportation function. I think that remains to be seen whether this is an effective solution. I think the Roanoke Police Department and the Sheriff's Department are probably in a better position to assess the likelihood of retired officers assisting with TDO and ECO transportation challenges. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Next slide. The Virginia Transportation Museum, this yet again was not successful. I don't think there was no legislation introduced on it. The Transportation Museum is represented by other lobbyists, and they did not proceed with legislation. Perhaps Ms. Flynn at the Transportation Museum can provide further insight. Next slide. For budget and funding, the Delegate Rasool's budget amendment for the downtown redevelopment plan, $600,000 did not make the final cut into the House budget. But as we mentioned earlier, the School of Medicine funding the capital construction, adding the School of Medicine to the capital construction pool, that was included in Governor Youngkin's budget, and we coordinated with Mr. Lawrence at the Korean School of Medicine, and that stayed in the budget. The proposed language stayed. Next slide. Amtrak, there was no budget amendment introduced, and the Regional Airport Commission is actually represented by others, and their budget amendments for the terminal improvements and for the runway improvements in the study of were not included. Next slide. The Council had particular interest in urban tree canopy. You'll note that what was passed is permissive, so it allows you to adopt an ordinance to do this. And there's, depending on the number of units per lot and acreage size and such, there are some details to that, but it does, it increases 25% tree canopy or 30% tree canopy, depending on the number of lots. And this is a permissive, local governments may adopt such ordinances. Next slide. You had various interest in additional solar, local government solar improvements. One directs the Department of Energy to adopt an online platform, not to be made public, not to be launched until, I should say, summer of 2027, that allows local governments and contractors for solar projects to work off of a unified, easy, facilitated permitting platform. That passed and is currently before the governor. The next one, House Bill 711 and Senate Bill 347, these are not permissives, these are shalls. This is a mandate on local governments to include regulations and exceptions for certain ground-mounted solar projects on, in your case, commercial or industrial property or institutional property, unless they're permitted by right. There are some nuances to that that Ms. Carini in her office will suss out in due course. Next slide. Similarly, this is also kind of a mandate in so much as it's a shall not. Local governments shall not adopt or prevent a locality localities shall not prohibit these so-called balcony solar devices. That's not to say that they are unfettered and can be used by right. They must comport to the local government's height and setback allowances or requirements. They must adhere to or not violate any historic district or architectural guidelines, things like that. You still have in your control, but you just can't prohibit the use of them. Similarly, investor-owned utilities like Appalachian Power, they cannot add interconnection fees to these. And it also prohibits landlords from disallowing these devices, which is not to say that they have unfettered, tenants have unfettered use of them. They still can't be used if it's going to require building changes to landlord's property or electrical upgrades or something like that. They're not allowed to require the landlord to undertake such actions. House Bill 1234 and the Senate Bill 26, this bill actually passed last year but was vetoed by Governor Youngkin, and it permits local ordinances to require up to 50% of essentially commercial parking areas, think of a major department store or something, to have solar canopy. If it's 100 spaces or more, you can require this. You have to work with, I think there's a work group established to, at the local level to develop such an ordinance, but this passed this year after being vetoed last year and is before the governor. Next slide. The various civil liberties, the constitutional amendments that the council supported, the prohibition on marriage or repealing the prohibition on marriage between same-sex persons, the cannabis retail market, which I'll discuss in a little bit, both passed. Next slide. The reproductive rights, freedom, the fundamental right to reproductive freedoms passed, and the voting rights for post-incarcerated persons, automatic restoration, that passed as well. Next slide. As you know, there was no Roanoke City Charter legislation introduced on May to November elections. Next slide. Other items of interest, the 1% sales tax, optional, local option 1% sales tax for K-12 school construction and renovation. This passed, but still problematic. Delegate Rasul had the best legislation. It was the most commonly accepted by the broadest audience. It had the greatest flexibility and application. You would be able to apply the sales tax to past issued debt. For example, there are a number of localities that they might not have immediate, in the future, immediate school construction or renovation needs, but they may have be carrying debt for recently completed capital projects. Delegate Rasool's bill, for example, would have allowed the 1% sales tax revenue to be applied to that past debt. That bill was not successful. It was successful in the House, but got held up in the Senate Appropriations Committee because the Senate had a different approach, a much more restrictive approach, and they included the language in the budget, not in legislation. So it's currently a matter before the budget conferees, but the Senate budget language is more restrictive. It does not allow revenue to be applied to past debt. And it contains the provision in it that doesn't allow it to reduce, supplant, or offset other local appropriations on the K-12 CIP. Local governments are finding the Senate language to be too restrictive, and perhaps in some localities not really useful enough to actually put before in referendum to their citizens the option for the voter referendum. They don't think it's flexible enough to warrant putting before their citizens. This has been the case, the decision of, or the input of a number of localities. So we will see where this goes in negotiations. There are a number of local governments in VML and VACO urging the budget conferees to change this language and adopt provisions more akin to Delegate Rasool's House Bill 334. We're working on this currently during the recess, so to speak. Next slide. And I'm nearing the end, Mr. Chairman. Collective bargaining. This is an expressed major concern of local governments. It doesn't take into effect until 2028, but the governor can start, she must appoint members of the Public Employee Relations Board by October of this year. The Public Employee Relations Board, the PERB, is all powerful. It has arbitration authority. It can sue you if it doesn't think local governments are negotiating in good faith. There are a number of local governments that have adopted resolutions and sent to the governor's office urging either a veto, not likely, or an amendment to remove local governments and public service authorities so that this would only apply to state government. The point being, no local governments that we can determine asked for this. No local governments that we can determine were upset at just the local opt-in only provision that's current law. And all local governments see that this can be really challenging to adopted budgets. It can really upset local government and school division authority and operations. There are probably 20 or 30 local governments, chambers of commerce, and public service authorities who have written letters to the governor or adopted resolutions and sent to the governor's office to oppose or amend this bill. And VML and VACO are taking a very strong stance on this. They prefer to leave local governments as is, which is the opt-in provision for collective bargaining. This is a major policy change in Virginia, as you know. Next slide. This is my last slide, Mr. Chairman. I know Roanoke has been engaged in photo speed monitoring efforts and ordinances and such in recent years, and you've paid a lot of attention both last year and this year to photo speed monitoring sorts of bills. There were two primary photo speed monitoring bills passed this year. The first one, House Bill 1120, is specific to highway work zones. It does have various requirements, amending various requirements in the code now that Ms. Carini and her office will suss out. But then Senate Bill 84, it's more expansive than just highway work zones. It also includes pedestrian crossing violations, stop sign violations, and school crossing zones in addition to highway work zones. So that one's a little bit more expansive. And those are currently before the governor at this time. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that's my last slide. I'm happy to take questions, or we'll turn it over to Mr. Cox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryant. That was very helpful. I think we do have some questions. I'll start if the mayor or our deputy chair, Volleson, have any questions. I'll come back to you.
I just had a question about House Bill 181, the affordable dwelling units. We know that they put in that we need to have a study done. So what does that look like between, and of course we have to get it reauthorized. So kind of what are the steps that are going to have to be done between now and then to get this bill moved forward?
If I remember correctly, I don't have the language before me. This was in a so-called enactment clause bolded in the bill at the end of the bill, and it directs local governments to set up a work group with your local certain stakeholders in your locality, if I'm remembering correctly, to consult with them on what shall be in this ordinance and how best to adopt an ordinance as you go forward. But I would have to refresh my memory. I don't have it before me, but it does require you to assemble local stakeholders, if I remember correctly, to before adopting such an ordinance to get their broad input.
All right, thank you. And I also had one other question, which was about casino legislation. I was just very interested to hear what happened in that realm this year.
Good question. The major, we don't have this on a slide. The major casino focus was in Fairfax. Very controversial. It's been going on for the last year or two. Where Fairfax, which is Fairfax County, which is suffering from elevated office vacancies and such, trying to, some legislators want to broaden the tax base in Fairfax. A couple years ago, they authorized a proposed legislation that did not pass to allow a casino to be developed in the Tyson's Corner area. It was not successful. This year it was put in again, and it was successful, then not, then successful, and finally, toward the end of session, there was a compromise, or there was a conferee report that I believe, again, allows a casino to be proposed in Tyson's area. And I believe it may have been not subject to referendum. I think that's correct. I did not follow it quite so closely. But it also overrode kind of some local government authorities or concerns. And the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors is best I recall, they're not happy with the state legislation, but it did go forward, and that is now before the governor as well. It was specific to Fairfax County.
I also wanted to ask a follow-up on that. It sounds like that there's a lot of interesting politics going on behind the Fairfax County one. But is there any movement on the state level to regulate casinos? I know that they're under the lottery board currently, and I know that there's some talk about what should be the governing body for them. I wanted to know if there's any movement on that.
There's been behind the scenes discussion on the Virginia Gaming Commission and the role the lottery plays. I believe one chamber or the other, I can't remember if it's the House and the Senate. I think the Senate preferred to keep it under the lottery. The House maybe preferred the Virginia Gaming Commission approach. The governor, at least candidate Spanberger, was articulated that she wasn't in favor of any additional gaming expansions until a Virginia Gaming Commission was put in place. That was the last I heard on her position anyway. So that went to skill games and, other forms of gaming. Now, that notwithstanding, there was also additional online gaming options that passed this year as well, and those are before the governor's right now. So I'm not sure what the governor is going to do, given her past position as a candidate on opposing additional gaming until the Virginia Gaming Commission or related similar entity was set up and could assess and chart a path forward. So we'll see.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't. I was curious, just as a point of reference, on Delegate Rasool's budget amendment to include the downtown revitalization study. Did you get any indication as to whether he'll reintroduce that in the next session?
I have not, but I can follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and we can do that as well. Thank you.
Councilman Hagan.
For HB 681, which is the one that deals with the transportation, which I think is you just passed it. For that one, does that include the 50-mile, no? Yeah, right there. Does that include the 50-mile limitation?
I don't think it does. I will have to go back and check. I don't think it does, but let me stop short of declaring that, Mr. Councilman, and I will get back in touch with you.
That was my only question.
Any other questions? Okay. I had a couple, but before I was going to piggyback off of Councilmember Vollison's question. Since you brought up the casino, were there any other updates from our casino lobbyists that the city's employed that you wanted to share with us at this time that would be relevant to the legislative update?
I did not engage. We had a conflict on that, so.
Sorry, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Bryan. I was talking to Councilman Vollison.
I'm sorry.
I know what you know, so I haven't heard anything about this year's. Yeah.
Okay, just checking. I had one quick question. Thank you, Mr. Bryan, and that was just to flag for Ms. Carini that on a couple of these bills, I'd love to get some time on your calendar to talk about the bills that will be permissive, meaning we'll have the option to decide how or if we put those forward. But I did want to flag for you the one bill that Mr. Bryant mentioned that was not permissive. I think that was HB 711 and SB 347, the solar permitting bill, and just to get that on your radar so that we can start getting whatever balls rolling we need, since it sounds like that's not optional for us. So.
Absolutely, Vice Mayor. When I met with Mr. Nash on our one-on-one, we talked about I'm going to do a memo that lists everything that's permissive and mandated, and then kind of a summary of everything else. So I will have that to you in the next couple months.
Thank you. That would be great. Appreciate that. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions for you, Mr. Bryant, then I'd be glad to hand it over to your colleagues to give a federal legislative update.
Great, thank you, and thank you, council members, and to echo what my colleague Preston said, thank you to Ms. Boer and to City Attorney Carini for all of their help and helping move quickly, especially with we'll get into in a second, but with earmarks, as I will just refer to them. Those things come at us very fast and a little chaotically, so they were very helpful in turning us around quickly. On a sort of personnel note, Scott, unable to be here this morning. He actually had his first child a few months ago and is taking her to the White House Easter egg roll. So he is at the White House right now, which is great for us. But to get into our presentation today, next slide, please. Wanted to dig into sort of, kind of what we've been up to lately, talk about earmarks, talk about just the general DC lay of the land. I'm sure everyone here, reads the newspaper and sees what's going on, but kind of give you how that's going to impact us, how that's going to impact the budget process. Things are changing very quickly. In fact, from the moment I submitted these slides to now, I've had one big update on what's going on in DC with a possible second reconciliation coming through down the pike for us. To kick it off with earmarks, as you know, in the parlance, they are called congressionally directed spending in the Senate. They're called community project funding in the House. So just to make it simple, we just refer to them as earmarks. And so we submitted 3 earmarks this time around. And then we had a 4th that we are partnering with one of our the Roanoke Regional Airport on. We just from a process standpoint, worked with City Attorney Carini and Ms. Boer to get out a sort of questionnaire to department heads, sort of asking for what are the pressing projects that we could get and go after federal funding on. We submitted that probably a little over a month ago, 5 weeks ago or so, and then asked department heads for the directors for their feedback and what projects are sort of shovel ready on the precipice of getting moving, and use that to source what we would ask for from our senators. Our members of Congress currently don't really participate in the earmark program. If they do, they'll do like 1 or 2 sort of big ones related to federal highway funding. They do not tend to do the projects that we would be going after. So we're really asking our senators, Senators Kane and Warner, to help us out here. So what we ended up submitting, and we I think had a few different projects come down for us. That folks sent over. What we ended up submitting, one was the little over $3 million in-river kayak park, which was submitted last year and not advanced into the final bill. We feel very strongly about that's a good project. We've talked about it with our Senate delegation. The second project that we submitted was the Amtrak station, which is updating the Rutherford building, renovating and building it out to create a permanent Amtrak station with enclosed waiting space, restrooms, ticketing, support space, ADA upgrades, and floodplain compliant systems. We had to phase that because that's a pretty large project, one where your typical earmark is somewhere between $500,000 and about $2.5 million, although sometimes they're bigger. But we phased that, so it's phase 1, so doing the study, doing all the things you have to do to get the project ready. We also did the same thing with the Mill Mountain Greenway Bridge phase 1 project, and that, just from a macro level, is to repair the historic stone wall, repave the roadway, replace the switchback bridge to preserve a key greenway link between downtown Roanoke and the Roanoke Star. So that is phase 1 of that project. And then finally, we learned while we were in DC with Councilman Lawson that the airport will be submitting a runway extension study. So that way we are sort of seconding their earmark submission. Next slide, please. In order to advance our earmarks and get those out there, what we've done in the sort of lead up time is we happen to have lucky coincidence. We had Councilman Volson up in DC for the National League of Cities conference. Took him around we stopped by Representative Klein's office to talk about some other issues. Went to Senator Warner's office, had a meeting with them regarding Roanoke housing, and then we've done some one-on-one follow-ups. I attended an event with Senator Kane, made sure to thank him on behalf of the city and for all that they're doing. We have also had a meeting recently with Senator Warner's office regarding Roanoke housing and the sort of we've had a decline in some of the HUD community block grant funding, Section 8 vouchers and some of those money from coming down. And so to talk about how to fix that, how do we get more of that money? How do we get the federal government to sort of be back funding at the levels that they were previously? So we sort of brainstormed some ideas, and we'll stay in touch with Senator Warner's office. Also, like I said, have had some sort of stop-ins just to make sure we're keeping the city's priorities to the front of mind with our Senate and House delegation. Next slide. To get into the macro big picture real quick, what's sort of coming down the pike for us? Number one, we are still figuring out this DHS shutdown. That matters because until the Department of Homeland Security is fully funded and everything is open again with Department of Homeland Security, so things like TSA, FEMA, until those are Border Patrol running again, it's kind of hard to get any other big pieces of legislation moving. What the majority in the House and Senate has decided is essentially they will do a two-track system. One where they get the deal that the Senate passed a couple weeks ago through probably this week, where they will reopen the Department of Homeland Security, but not fund or not have specific funding mechanism for TSA, or sorry, not TSA, for ICE and for the Border Patrol in there, and then they will fund ICE and the Border Patrol via a second reconciliation bill. That's a very big deal just because reconciliation last year took up a lot of time, took up a lot of energy and oxygen in DC. What House and Senate Republicans settled on was essentially a piece of legislation that focused primarily on tax cuts and then cuts to Medicaid and other sort of safety net programs. So Reconciliation 2.0 could be something similar to last time. What House and Senate Republicans are pushing for is a narrower bill that sort of focuses on funding ICE and the Border Patrol for 3 years. That would essentially safeguard them from, if the House or Senate control flips to the Democrats, basically make sure that those programs are funded and they can't really touch it or make any modifications to those programs. So the reconciliation remains to be seen. The president has said he'd like to see Reconciliation 2.0 on his desk by June 1st. That's very, very ambitious, but we will see. You'll start to see, I think, pieces of information starting to come out this week about what reconciliation is looking like, what types of, how are they going to pay for things like ICE, the Border Patrol, the war in Iran, probably looking at things like changes to the tax code, changes to the healthcare system. A big focus for this administration is the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on in our safety net and our sort of social programs, things like Medicaid, Medicare, and so they are beginning to find ways to cut back on those programs, trying to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. So I would look to be that one way of having some savings in the second reconciliation bill. Also at play here, it's another piece of this sort of Jenga that's going on in DC, is just appropriations and getting the government funded. Last year, government funding did not get completed until the year we are currently in, which is why earmarks and other things were due under such a tight timeline. Under normal order, the budget bill would be done at the end of September and signed in October, and then we would have a few months to work on earmarks and other things for appropriations for the next year. This time around, all that wasn't done until January, February. So things are sort of behind already. They're working to catch up. The thing that's kind of hanging over, I think, the head is of all chairs in the House and Senate for the committees is the upcoming election in the midterms and sort of the potential for any sort of shift in partisan control and making sure that they're, I think, getting through final priorities, final things that they can put forward before an election done now. Obviously, that's easier said than done because there's just a lot going on. So it's going to be hard to be seen. The other dynamic here, I think, that really drives Washington right now is that the majority in the House is a 2 or 3 seat margin. Any given day, if one member is sick, if someone doesn't show up, if something happens, you're really looking at a very tight margin in the House. So that can make big legislation even harder to pass and even more difficult. Outside of sort of ending the Department of Homeland Security shutdown and appropriations and a potential second reconciliation bill, the other things that are on that are sort of on the agenda moving forward for Congress, and again, I'm not the most optimistic about these things getting done just because we've got reconciliation, we've got appropriations have to get done, and we also have very tight margins in the House and in the Senate. But the other pieces of legislation that I would just put on your sort of radar for potentially moving forward would be things like the SAVE Act. That is a piece of legislation that the president is very big on. SAVE Act would essentially make voter ID the law of the land nationally, put more federal controls on the elections process, which is typically controlled at the state, county, and city level. SAVE Act is something that they want to fold into reconciliation. That's going to be a little harder to actually do because reconciliation is supposed to be in terms of budget policies and not in terms of actual policies. So SAVE Act is something that I think look for the majority in the House and the Senate right now to find some way to get some of those pieces through. This is a huge priority for President Trump. And obviously is getting some pushback from Democrats and others, just because things like you have to prove your citizenship in order to vote. Your birth documents, so things like your birth certificate, have to be the same as what you get for what you use for your voter ID, which is harder on married spouses who have a last name change. So SAVE Act is something that's controversial. I think the president is continuing to push this on House and Senate Republicans to the tune of he's even asking them to maybe reform the filibuster in order to get the SAVE Act through so they can pass it with a simple majority. Secondly is the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. This is a piece of legislation that deals largely with trying to fix our supply issue in housing. This is the largest and biggest piece of federal legislation taking aim at our housing supply in a generation. So it's a very big deal. It has passed the House. It then passed the Senate. The Senate made changes to it, though, that mean it has to go back to the House. It passed on a very bipartisan basis, which is pretty shocking for this day and age. So I would look for the House to take this back up. The sticking point right now is sort of whether or not institutional investors, the president wants institutional investors to get out of single family housing and also out of some affordable housing. So that is a sticking point in the House. People think, whatever capital, whatever money we can get into housing, we shouldn't be discriminatory on what type that is sort of the pushback there. Others say that things like rent to build or build to rent done by investor companies is actually hurting the ability of home ownership and making it harder in some communities to buy a house. Road to Housing also has some, I think, important implications for cities and municipalities. It would essentially change the formula of how one receives HUD grants. Based upon the zoning policies, any sort of, for lack of a better word, any NIMBY policies in one's zoning, in one's multifamily housing policies would cause the HUD money you get to lessen. So this is something that League of Cities, NACO, the County Association are all looking at and trying to push back so that local governments continue to have local control of housing. The third thing I would point to you on the horizon is the president has put out his framework for AI, the AI economy, for AI legislation. The president sort of is, I think his administration is erring more on the side of fewer regulations, putting some consumer controls in, putting controls when it comes to safety, children, others, and families. But largely feel like AI companies need a low regulatory framework in order to compete with China and to have the best to sort of lead the AI arms race. There's a feeling, I think, across I wouldn't say this is a red or blue issue, just a general, I think, issue across the board where there's a feeling that AI is going to affect so many different parts of our economy, out of our work, our government, everything, that there should be some rules put in place. Obviously, AI is changing very quickly. So how do you do that in a way that will ensure success in the future? So there continues to be talks among Democrats and Republicans to look at some sort of AI legislation we shall see. That's a big one to crack, but I think that would probably be the third big thing that Congress is trying to look at before they go into the midterm recess in October. So those are the big things on the horizon for us. Earmarks and appropriations, priority number one. Number two is sort of keeping those earmarks front of mind for our delegation. And then number three are what pieces of legislation that could come down the pike in an election year that could affect Roanoke, and want to make sure that we're in the conversation. So that's our big things that we are working on. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, need anything in particular, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. They're always available. We will be in Roanoke next month, which we're very excited about. But happy to take any questions or anything on what we're up to or any of these pieces of legislation, and happy to get more back to you.
Thank you very much. I will open it up to my colleagues for any questions. Councilman Nash?
Excuse me. Hey, how you doing? This is Councilman Fajon Nash. I wanted to ask, or just kind of put on your radar, this weekend I was at an event and I was talking to our folks who work at New Horizons Healthcare, which is a federally qualified health center here in Roanoke, and they fill in a huge gap. The vast majority of our healthcare is offered through Carillion, but there's a large portion of our population here in the city and surrounding area that rely on New Horizons for their primary care, and then particularly their dental care especially. And they're nonprofit, so they cannot officially lobby, but they have some lobby firms that they kind of neutrally work with. But we could be on the lookout for legislation that could potentially impact them, particularly with their funding with the Health and Human Resources or Department of Health. I think that'd be something good for us to put on our radar, because that would be a big hit to our community if we lost, or they lost a substantial amount of their funding.
Absolutely. I'm happy to keep an eye out for that. Another thing that's happened since I submitted this, on Friday, the president put out his budget request. Generally on the Hill, it's sort of considered the president. The joke on the Hill is that the president proposes, the Appropriations Committee disposes, and they do what they want to do. But the president did have some pretty big, I think a 10% sort of across the board cut on domestic spending. Some of the programs that were the biggest impacted were EPA, environmental regulation enforcements, but also in the HHS and the healthcare bucket. So that's something we are monitoring, and we will keep an eye on that and do a little digging into New Horizons and what their funding mechanisms are and how that can affect the city.
Thank you.
Mr. McGuire? Oh. Yeah, I just also wanted to add that as part of the president's proposal, the budget proposal, he's requesting to eliminate Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, as well as the Continuum of Care, all of those which are sorely needed in our community.
Thank you for bringing that up. I want to come back to that because I have an idea on a possible letter. But Councilman Volleson, did you have any questions or comments?
I have no questions. Just wanted to thank Clayton and Scott for the trip up to the Hill. It was great being able to meet with Senator Kane and Representative Klein and speak with Senator Warner's staff. And, you know, these things are also things that we talk about as making sure that there's hope, that there's HUD funding, you know, making sure that we're getting funding to the National Park Service and things like that, along with our earmarks. So I'm happy to have taken that stuff to our legislative body for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman.
Councilwoman Sanchez?
This is directed to my colleague, Mr. Volleson. I just want to say thank you for advocating for us to have a federal lobbyist. This is very important, so thank you. And also Councilman Nash for advocating for New Horizons. Thank you.
Woman? I had a couple of questions. Did you have any? Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Just a couple quick questions. Could you give us the amounts for the FY27 earmarks? I think you mentioned the number that was submitted for the In-River Kayak Park. And I was curious if you could give us, I think you said that one was a little over 3 million. Could you give us the totals if you have them for the others that were submitted?
Yes, let me get those exact numbers to you. We had some shifting around of like the original what was being proposed, which was much larger than like I had said for what was being submitted. We actually have city personnel submit the final request. So let me just get that back over to you.
Chairman, I can tell you what they are.
Yeah.
So there was the In-River Kayak Park was a little bit over 3. The Amtrak, we put in for 10 million. The Mill Mountain Greenway, we put in for 10 million. And the Roanoke Regional Airport runway extension study is about 7 million.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Bohr should have the actual documents of, yeah.
And then one other question. I think I heard you mention that our representatives are not participating as much with the community project funding or not as involved with the earmarks. Could you say a little bit more about that? Just specifically us, we're represented exclusively by Representative Klein. Can you say more about his role or how he is or is not participating in the earmark process?
Yeah, I would just say that he tends to pick up a couple earmarks a year, not sort of in the, like this year, House members were told that they could pick between 15 and 20 projects. So he generally just has fewer and a larger amount one. And I would just say that's very common for depending on sort of what party someone's in or how they sort of view the process of how they submit the earmark process. And so they tend to go a smaller amount with a bigger amount and then a smaller volume of earmarks.
Okay, interesting. I'll follow up with you afterwards. I'd be curious to see what earmarks he has submitted recently. Yes, sir.
On that, what he typically does, what Representative Klein typically does is gets a large amount of money for I-81. Hits most of his district. So that's what he does is he does small, large things. Like, so I think last year he got something like $80 million for I-81 improvements. That's what he tends to do. And I think it's unfortunate, especially because of his position on the Appropriations Committee, which should normally, you have more say in where things go. But for him to not be a part of that and be on appropriations is disappointing, in my opinion.
I think I was curious about that. And then lastly, I was wondering what my colleagues would think about. I was going to ask if there would be support for us sending a letter. I would ask for a motion from council to Congress opposing the SAVE Act, which, as I understand from everything I know about that, from civil rights groups and voting rights groups and women's groups, that it's a pretty aggressive attempt to suppress the vote. So I would be interested in putting forward a motion to have council send a letter to our federal representatives opposing that. Before I do that, though, I was wondering, to the point that Ms. Turner brought up about some of the items, I think, in the budget that were zeroed out, I would also be open if folks thought it would be helpful to send a similar letter. Maybe we could do that as well. I don't know if the audiences would be the same, but I know we depend a lot on that funding. And so to be on record, perhaps, if folks would be open to that, I just wanted to put that out there as an idea.
So I'll move I think we have to do it as two separate, or can we do both of them at the same time?
You'd have to do two separate.
So let's do, I'll make a motion for the first to send a letter from council in opposition to the SAVE Act, and I will volunteer to work with Mr. Volleson and Ms. Carini and Ms. Turner on that, and anyone else can, of course, provide feedback and input. I would need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a second from Council Member Sanchez-Jones, and then I think we would need a vote. So I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Hagan?
Nay.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mr. Nash? Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
No.
And Chairman McGuire.
Aye. Great, thank you very much. And then for the second item that we are talking about, could you, Ms. Turner, tell us again what were the buckets of funding? You mentioned CDBG, but what were the other pieces?
Yes, it proposed to eliminate the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG, the Home Investment Partnership Program, or the HOME Program, and it proposes the elimination of the HUD's Continuum of Care.
And this is in the
This is in the Trump administration's.
Trump administration's proposed
proposal.
budget.
Mhm.
So this letter
Budget
would be sent to the White House from council and maybe CC'd, we could figure that out, CC Congress?
We could probably send it to our representative.
Yeah, it should go to our representatives,
Yeah.
I believe, because the White House is giving their proposed budget.
To Congress.
To Congress.
Fantastic. Well, did you want to make the motion on that one, Mr. Volleson?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Second.
And the mayor, second, so thank you, Councilman Volleson for the motion, Mayor for the second, and then Ms. McCoy, will you please call the roll?
Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mr. Nash? Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? And Chairman McGuire.
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much.
And it carries. Thank you all. I don't have any other questions for our colleagues today from McGuire Woods. Does anyone else before we start to close out?
I would just say one thing is, as we start to go through this gateway for the National Park Service, Clayton, if you can keep us posted as to what we need to do to continue with that. And I also wanted to bring up something that happened at the National League of Cities. I went to a panel on rail, and one of the things that's coming up is the Union Pacific merger with Norfolk Southern. And there I learned how we as a city can become a community of interest that basically says, you know, these are some of the issues that we are having with Norfolk Southern, whether that's, you know, at-grade crossings or pollution or whatever it may be. And we can put those forward. And so then as that merger starts to go forward, we have a seat at the table instead of being on the menu. So I just wanted to flag that, and I'll be getting that information to Ms. Bohr. But I think that's something that we should do as a city. I don't know, do we need to get consensus before moving towards that? Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we support the city becoming a community of interest for the Norfolk Southern Union Pacific merger.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion from Councilman Volleson, seconded by Mayor Cobb, to support Roanoke becoming a community of interest, to get a seat at the table around the Union Pacific merger with Norfolk Southern. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Turner.
Yes. So what we'll do as staff is understand, you know, kind of research and see what that means, and then bring it back to council on what the steps that we have to take and what that means.
That's a great idea, yeah.
Okay.
So would we need to vote on that then, since we're just?
So I don't know what that means. I don't feel comfortable voting on something where I would necessarily know. So can perhaps we table this until the next legislative meeting?
That's what I was asking, is there, can we just direct staff to look into
Yeah.
it, to get the
That's fine.
information?
Yeah.
And that- So we don't
Yeah.
need to vote on anything today, I don't think. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
You need to vote to give me direction
Direct her.
for us to research and bring it back to you.
Yes, okay, thank you. I understood that, but we don't need to vote to give you that direction today, or we do?
We do. So I'll
We do,
I'll
okay.
amend the motion to to directing staff to look into how the city could possibly become a community of interest for the Union Pacific Norfolk Southern merger. Friendly amendment, yeah.
Friendly amendment offered by the mayor to the updated amendment by Councilmember Volleson.
We gotta do Robert's
To look into, to do an information fact-finding on this to see if it makes sense for us. So thank you very much. We have a second. and I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
All right. Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones. Mayor Cobb. Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
And Chairman McGuire.
Aye. And it carries. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Turner, for your staff time looking into that. And if there is nothing else, I'll thank our reps from McGuire Woods for being with us today. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 4th, 2026, in this room at 9 a.m. And if there is no other business, I will adjourn this meeting. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Vice Mayor McGuire. Thanks, everyone, for an excellent legislative committee meeting and all of the updates. I will now reconvene our council meeting. We just have two quick questions. First of all, any items listed on the 2:00 p.m. City Council docket requiring discussion or clarification from anybody? And then any general topics for discussion by members of council at this point? All right, we don't have any briefings this morning, so we will be in recess until 2:00 p.m. for our series of closed meetings.